All right, welcome back to the With, Where, and Who podcast. I'm here with Ghost Moths, Preston and Carlos. How are y'all doing
Hey, how's it
today?
going? Oh, doing pretty well. How about you?
It's going pretty great. So first things first, you're our two-piece band, correct? Just two of y'all.
Yes, we are.
Okay,
That's correct.
awesome. So just state your name, full name, and what you do in the band.
All right, I'm Preston Pound. I'm lead vocals, guitar, and bass.
And I'm Carlos, and I pretty much do everything other than that, but mostly play drums.
Being in a two-piece band, does it ever feel like you're doing everything in a way because they're so limited?
I think, in a way, yes, because I have kind of an odd setup where I end up attempting to kind of have guitar and bass register playing at the same time. And Carlos has to fill up a huge amount of space sonically to make up for that. So it can get a little busy on our ends.
Do you ever feel like you have more freedom doing that though, since it's just two of y'all, or does it just always feel like stressful more so?
Well, Carlos and I have been playing music together for a very, very long time. We've been in a couple of bands together, and I think since we know each other pretty well from a musical standpoint, it's easy for us to know what's going on. So we're already pretty free as is, just from a knowing each other's standpoint, professional standpoint.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that makes things a lot easier. Because like there are bands that like form through record labels that are like Ringo Starr, for example. Like he didn't know any of those guys in the Beatles way beforehand. The
Oh,
record
geez.
label just knew. Yeah, is that the story? You don't know that story?
No.
So it's kind of insane. So the Beatles, before they were signed to a record label, it was Paul, Ringo, George, and then Pete Best, who was their original drummer. And I forget the name of the record label. It wasn't Apple Recordings. It was something different. But they basically were going to get signed to a record label to put out albums, and the record label loved every single one and thought they were really like talented, except for Pete Best. And so what ended up happening was that they personally went to the Beatles and said, "Hey, you have to remove this guy out of your band, or you're not going to get signed." And so what ended up happening was that he got kicked out before they signed the deal, and then the record label found another guy, which was Ringo Starr, and that's literally how he became a part of the band.
Jeez.
Yeah, so Pete Best literally saw all of their success like take off right in front of his eyes.
Oh,
Imagine
that
like being
sucks.
kicked out of. I mean, getting kicked out of a band is bad, but that band on that level back then,
Jeez.
it's like
Yeah,
depressing. Yeah.
that's really sad.
So I thought I would share that memento with y'all.
Oh God.
Yeah. So yeah, the point is that it's really good. Like once you know people like in a band, because I think that's also like a thing of trust too.
Absolutely.
Have you all ever been in bands where it's just like you didn't know the person too well, so you weren't as trustworthy with them, or has that never really been the case?
I mean, I
Got
think
any?
I can. I was about to say, I think I can kind of speak a little bit to that, especially when like Preston and I were in our first band. It was kind of weird because like Preston and I didn't know each other at the time, and so it took a couple of practices, I think, for us to like open up. And I think once we realized how much alike we were and the same kind of music style we're both into, and it really just kind of spawned from there. So yeah, I get that feeling of when you first get started with people you don't know, it's kind of weird, and you're kind of like, oh man, I have to play perfectly. They have to think I'm legit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was terrified during our first rehearsal.
What terrified you? Just like not knowing anyone, or just like not knowing songs?
Oh,
Pardon? So, sorry, what was that?
No, I was just asking like what terrified you like initially. Was it just like not knowing songs, like not knowing people?
I think it's just always a little bit nerve-wracking when you go into a room for the first time as a band, and especially so if you don't know all the members, because you kind of have to get a read for their personality while also trying to be productive in terms of a rehearsal. So you have to be on your A game in terms of music. It's a lot of factors that can be a little bit stressful.
So with your and yeah, like I mean, because I don't know, I've always been like the most like outgoing person, I guess. There's never been a time where I felt terrified. But I could like imagine like even like children or like anyone like going into a place that's not they're known and breaking out of their comfort zone. It could be terrifying. But would you say it's like breaking out of your comfort zone in a way? Since you're
I would
already like so adept to music?
I would say at this point it wouldn't be, but I was still pretty
Right.
fresh-faced when we first started playing. Carlos, it was around 2013, wasn't it?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
So you've been playing music for a little over 5 years.
Yeah.
Together.
Was it always like that gothic blues sound, or did it ever change over? Did it change over time? Because like when I first heard that, I was like, "This is like something." Because when you think of like music in Atlanta, you think there is a rock scene, there is a rap scene, and those are like the two things. But I'm like, okay, this is now we're getting somewhere. Was it always like that?
Carlos and I actually got started off in a pop punk band together.
Really?
We were called Point of Sizzle. We released 2 albums and played all over Alabama for a better part of 3 years.
What's the music scene like there compared to Atlanta? Like, is it any different, or is it like much more open?
In Auburn, it's mostly fraternity gigs and cover bands at the bars. So being an original act is a little tougher in Auburn.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I think of Atlanta, it's like Atlanta, even like in Augusta and like Macon. Like Macon has a huge punk scene, by the way. Just side note. But it's a much more open platform where people will say, "Oh, you have a talent. You want to do this. You want to do that. We'll give you this platform to do it." And I've always felt that way, like with music in Atlanta. And I felt like everywhere, like New York or LA, it was just like always like really shut off.
Yeah, Carlos and I, with Point of Sizzle, we actually kind of got our chops around doing cover gigs, hybrid cover original kind of sets, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty interesting. I think when you're kind of stuck in a place that really wants cover bands, it's nice when you're trying to mix original music with the style that you're covering, and people don't recognize that. Hey, I just played an original tune. It's like this is the first time we've ever played the song, and why are you singing along?
Yeah, you try to make your pop punk songs so catchy they don't even realize it's not a Jimmy Eat
Yeah.
World tune.
Like, there's no way you know the song, but I mean, cool. I appreciate you. I appreciate the effort.
I think there are a lot of pop punk songs that are like that though, where you don't know the name of the band, but you definitely know the song and you
Oh
will
yeah.
sing along. Even if you don't like it, it's just that catchy.
And that's so much into the pop aspect of that genre.
Yeah. I mean, pop music is like that definition wise.
Yeah, the idea is to sink your attention into it and make sure that you can't ever forget it or let go of it.
What made you want to let go of it and just go into this whole completely different route though with Gothic blues?
So growing up, I listened to a lot of different music. My folks were not musicians, but they were audiophiles. They loved listening to music and going to concerts. And really, the style of music that was the most prevalent was bluegrass, actually. So I was listening to a lot of bluegrass. I was going to a lot of bluegrass shows. I was also camping and hiking a lot as kids. So there was a lot of campfire kind of ghost stories, and I really kind of liked that storytelling style of music, and I just really wanted to try something new. I fell in love with the blues kind of my last year of college, which would have been about 2015, and I haven't really stopped since.
So with that love of blues, you do have songs like Whiskey Doe and Burn the Barn. And before those songs were even on like your latest release, they were always like demos. With those demos, did you ever like think to yourself like we should like put this on an EP, or were the like scraps that you thought like, oh, this shouldn't be on an EP? I've
It's
always like
funny
wondered what
those
it looked like.
staying in that format. It's funny because we when we first started doing those songs, actually Carlos joined very recently. I moved back up to Atlanta. This Ghost Moths actually kind of started in Statesboro in 2015 for a few years, and my previous drummer at the time and I got inebriated, and we went into a barn with 3 microphones and just kind of hit go and see what happened. And those demos were what happened. We were happy with the lo-fi sound, but I think over time I realized I wanted something a little more polished. And when it came time to make an album, Carlos is a recording genius. We did all of the recording ourselves. Carlos mixed and mastered everything, and he's just got a really good ear for that kind of stuff. So I was happy with the lo-fi quality, but knowing that there was a little bit of more untapped potential there was a huge motivator for that.
Yeah. What's been a highlight of your career so far with that Gothic blues sound that you've tapped into since 2015?
The amount of interesting people I've met.
Ooh, do tell more.
So it's a weird kind of music around here because we're not heavy enough to be a metal band, but we're too heavy to be a blues band. And
Right.
there are some pop elements in some of the songwriting, but we're not a pop band. And it's kind of weird how we sit in a Venn diagram, and you kind of get odd interest from mixed bags of all people that are interested in different kinds of music.
So, like, is there ever been like a situation where you were playing a live show and people didn't expect what they were buying into because
You
of
want to
that?
talk? You want to talk about Red Clay, Carlos?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we've had a couple gigs where you kind of show up and you look at the crowd and you can just say, man, they have no idea what's about to hit them right in the face. So, but then again, like it just kind of it makes it all the more exciting because you really you have no idea how they're going to react. Like they could absolutely love it or they could absolutely hate it, and I think that kind of adds to the excitement of you walk into a situation like that, you have no idea what's going to happen, and you're just like, hey, let's just rock and roll.
We've definitely scared a few grandmothers.
I just think that's so funny though. Like when you're on that like pathway of like continually like, making music and playing live shows, and you're starting out early in your career, you never know like how your show's gonna go. Has there ever been like a time where you know like the best show and the worst show? And if so, what was the worst and best show?
Worst show.
If you want to tell,
Oh
you don't
yeah,
have to if you don't
I
want
have no
to.
problems with that. I don't know, Carlos. What was our worst show?
Is this for the whole career of us playing together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, let me tell you about Finnegan's.
Oh, Finnegan's. Oh God, I blocked that out.
Now, I tell you what, like it was a Wednesday night, and we were still in college, so we had class to be at the next morning. But our buddy was up in Huntsville, and he's like, "Hey, I've got a gig for us, and it's this like small little bar." And we figured, it's a Wednesday night. How bad could it really be? Well, we walk in there, and it's like the smokiest bar I've ever been in my whole life. So besides that, and spending plenty of time setting up and 4 hours of playing cover tunes to mostly the bartender, at the end of the night, it was just, well, it's 1 or 2 in the morning. Got to make a 4 hour drive back to Auburn and
My God.
be at class the next day.
Never mind that our equipment all smelled like cigarette smoke for days afterwards.
Yeah, it was one of those gigs where you just get home and you're like, I feel dead. I'm probably close to death, and now I have to go do a whole day, and it was not worth it. But I mean,
No.
Oh well, we have a good story to tell from it. So
Yeah, that's definitely here on this podcast, and maybe the grandmothers liked it too. So who knows?
Maybe so. In terms of best gigs, do you mind if I do like 2 or 3?
Yeah, no, you can do as many as you
No,
want or
man.
as little as you want.
You got to stick to one. I think he very clearly laid out the rules.
I honestly think one of my favorite gigs that we've played collectively was when Carlos actually joined. It was our first show together. We went down back to Statesboro from Atlanta, and there was a music festival that took place in someone's house. It was like the house show to end all house shows. And the house was overflowing with people. And I love the intimacy of house shows because people are there and only there to listen to music. So it was a very attentive crowd that was really into what we were doing, and we had a lot of really good interactions with folks. Another notable one is actually a few weeks ago, I was down in Dothan playing at Feature Players Cabaret for another kind of gothic-y punk blues band, the Super Elevators, that were having their EP release, and that was just awesome to find another group that had similar styles of music and were kind of in the same hemisphere music wise as we were.
Well, now you're going to be opening up for Lincoln Durham soon at the Masquerade, so
I was gonna put an asterisk on that. I can already tell that's gonna be a very memorable show.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, cause have y'all ever performed or been to the Masquerade?
We've actually played there when back in March maybe.
I think so. It was a while back last year, but
New location or yes, new location then.
New location, yes. I've
Okay.
played
Yeah.
at the old Masquerade, and it's just kind of interesting to see how much it's changed over time. You know, it's a change of location and style, and almost like a whole different population of people attending Masquerade shows now.
I know, because I remember, because I have stories from like my parents and even my friends' parents. Like my friends, the first day my friends' parents went on, they went to the Masquerade, but before it was even a concert venue, it was a pizza restaurant.
It was, yeah.
Yeah,
My
it was a
aunt
pizza
tells me
restaurant.
stories of that.
Then I think before it was a pizza restaurant, it was like a mill because there's always that like old mill that's in front of it
Yeah, I
that's not
think they
gone
used to
away.
load drums in through like a lift, like an old like cotton elevator or something.
That's so funny. That's
That's
I
kind
mean,
of
if that's
funny.
true, then that's awesome.
I love the
Um,
Masquerade, but I don't necessarily miss the feeling up in heaven that you're going to fall through the
oh no.
floorboards.
Well, when I was in that whole Masquerade, I was still in high school, so I never really realized it then. But now I think back, I'm like, because I'm much more aware of things now, and I'm always scared of like that happening.
I've definitely jumped through my share of plywood stages before, so yeah, the fear is real.
I love how like that's not like one of your worst shows.
It was a great
I feel
show.
like that'd be the worst thing happening, like plywood just going through your legs.
I managed to go out pretty unscathed, so
That's
not too
lucky.
bad. Yes, very.
Well, since I'm not a performer, I will tell you a story of my friend. He's a rapper called Wiley from Atlanta, and
Mhm.
you don't know him?
No, I think I've seen posters or maybe posts around Facebook, but I haven't actually met them.
Yeah, he was at South by Southwest. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
But he was performing in Texas a lot during that whole week, and he was telling the story back at the radio station. He was telling us um, this story of how he was performing in this bar, like you said, and it wasn't even like an actual bar with a stage. It had like a back area, and so he performed in the back area.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's how it starts off, and so not even like an actual stage. Like so already, like people aren't even watching. To make matters worse, he went back in March, and that's when March Madness was going on, and so
Oh
everyone
yeah.
was like glued to the TV. And so I think he performed like one or two songs like out of the set, and like no one's paying attention. Everyone's just like watching March Madness, and he just like stops it and says, "Y'all want to watch the game?" And they were like, "Yeah." And so he just stopped the whole performance and watched the game with them.
That's wow, that's ballsy. That's gutsy.
I know, like I wouldn't. If I was in that position, like I would understand like not wanting to perform because like I mean, I'm not in a band or I'm not an artist, so I don't know what that feeling is like when the audience isn't paying attention. Like, do you feel? No, I mean, not that you'd actually do it, but do you feel like you would say something if that were to happen, or would you just like cut the set short, or how does
I
that work
think
out?
Yeah, I think reading the room is appropriate, and that might be cutting some slower tunes out and maybe trying to push your more energetic music there to see if you can grab anything and hold on to attention. Yeah, that can be frustrating, though. It can be very frustrating. I don't really know if I have a solid, plan A for something like that.
I've always like because I've always like wondered that because like I've seen artists and that has happened where like the room doesn't feel good. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just something that they go through and they just go with it.
Honestly, I feel like
Um,
Carlos and I would just start doing pop punk covers as like a throwback to our olden days.
then you'd have people singing along with you.
Yeah, and then just immediately go back to Gothic blues just to really kind of like weird them out.
yeah. I mean, part of it too is like you got to like when you think about like really big name acts, the fact that they're able to put on a concert for an hour and a half and totally keep everybody's attention, I think says a lot to how they kind of craft their set lists and then the overall environment of the performance. So like when you think about like their light shows or all the different effects that they have going on. Just even so much of like how they, will structure. Like, do they have a few intense songs back to back to back, or do they have like a little break in there? So how do they keep the rhythm going?
I couldn't agree more. I think, the problem is some folks, it becomes the exact same experience as listening to the CD. And when you're playing a live show, you have this opportunity to really interact with folks and provide this really great experience. And I'd like to think that we try to put on as energetic and interactive of a performance as possible.
Yeah. And I always like to say, you're not there to listen to the music. You're there to experience the show.
Exactly.
I definitely like agree with that. Like, because even like listening to "Burn the Barn" and like listening to that song that you have King B, where it has that that like definitely like if you play that live, do people like stomp their feet to it if it's in your set list?
We definitely try to get that started with better success than not. Yeah.
It's definitely started like from what I hear.
I mean, in a weird way, I'm too busy losing my mind during those parts of the song that I don't even know what's going on out there. So
Carlos drumming is a sight to behold. Absolutely.
That's the selling point of the show. Why do you come to the show? Just come see.
Just to see you drum.
Yeah, and then the other thing too, it's a good show when Preston's microphone is being used as a guitar pick at some point. I've seen that happen, and like you talk about the best shows. Like, how do you tell? That's it. When the mic has come off the mic stand, you know it's on.
This is why, to any potential venues listening, this is why I bring my own microphones to shows.
Just so like, yeah, I'm sure like the Masquerade like would have their own mics and everything. You wouldn't want to like rough them up.
That would be terrible, and I wouldn't do that.
Like for like a venue with that much like prestige.
Yeah, that would just be kind of like spitting on somebody at that point. I wouldn't do that.
But yeah, no, your music is definitely has that live environment feel to it. Like
definitely. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was just saying, like, it's that I was gonna go back to like what you were saying about bands that are prominent and putting on shows for like an hour and a half, and it does matter about the set list. Like, it really does. Like, with the amount of bands I've seen live, like, the reason that I remember them is not, I mean, the live acting and music, but like the set list. Like, I care about like what songs they played, like what order they play them in, how they stylize it, like differentiating from the studio version to the live version.
Right.
There's a lot of things I look for.
I think there's a lot of people that can go through like audio fatigue almost, where they get tired of hearing kind of the same tempo or the same energy, or even songs in the same key or same kind of like guitar effects. So I think it's important to mix those up live in order to prevent that, because the last thing you want is for the audience to kind of feel like you've overstayed your welcome.
That's how I felt when I saw Sublime with Rome years ago. Yeah, it was the worst concert I've ever been to, if I'm being honest.
Dang, I'm sorry. I was actually a huge Sublime fan back in high school.
And I was too, and that concert was just like, I felt like bad. It was first of all, like the opening act, like they had Cypress Hill open for Sublime with Rome.
Really?
I thought that was really weird.
That's really odd. That's an odd choice.
And then there's this other band called Pepper, which is a really good band.
I actually really like Pepper. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really awesome. They're amazing live. Like, then they were like the opening band for Cypress Hill before Sublime. So Pepper goes on stage, kills it. Like literally, like people in the back were like jamming out. Like everyone was like explosive. Then they leave. Then Cypress Hill comes out. People lose their minds. And then Sublime came out, and people like still lost their minds, but it did not have the same effect as like Cypress Hill or Pepper.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a huge lineup change with Brad gone, and I just wonder if people were trying to recapture that moment, and then once they saw it live, it may not have been the same.
It really wasn't. It's also they don't have a lot of stage energy too. Like,
that's disappointing. That's really sad to hear.
Yeah, because like I've seen videos of them live before, and I thought like, I mean, they're not like the most. Their music isn't the most energetic music in the world, except for like songs like "Date Rape" and stuff like that are like fast, like hard, like
Seed
fun
and
songs.
yeah.
Yeah, see, like that's, and then but then I don't know, like they play "Date Rape," but and it was the same thing. It just felt like there was like a studio recording version of it live.
Yeah, I can't
I don't
really
know.
tell how it's been a while since I've listened to that song. I don't know how well it's aged in this day.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like if you were like to release that song now, it would not be as successful as it was back in the early '90s.
For a very good reason.
Yeah, that's what I feel like with a lot of songs though, like literal or like movies too. Like I was what was I listening to? I was listening to what actually I wasn't listening to it. I was like watching that for some reason I was watching that music video. It's Raining Men, which is like a cheesy like '80s song.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
actually
and
never seen the music video for that.
it's basically just the I forget the name of the group, but it's like I think it's like three women, and all around them is just like these like scantily clad men, like with shirts off and everything, like what like running around. And I'm thinking like if that was like reverse roles, then people would be, and it came out now, people would be freaking out about it.
Again, for good reason.
Yeah, for definitely good reason. Like the same thing too, like with like if that came out now. But it's just so weird, like how music ages like nowadays.
Right. And I think you know, with our music, I think that there's a satirical aspect. I think kind of the idea with the songs that we write is it's kind of I like living in the South, but there's a lot of problems with
Hmm.
Southern culture, and I don't know how well that comes across in our music, but there's kind of songs that would seem like there's the glorification of violence or things of that nature, and that's certainly not the case. It's
Well, there are
coming from
movies that do that too, though.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
coming from a satirical standpoint of like, you know, it's almost like if you kind of identify with these lyrics, you might want to take a look in the mirror a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like that's and also like there I mean even it's like the song titles if I'm looking at them like Burn the Barn, The Wreck of Tammy Marie, Whiskey Doe, there definitely is that like southern like inspiration in it, but like you said, like you should take a look at yourself in the mirror if you're like thinking anything that's just complete like if you agree in fact to this, then there's like a problem. It is
Right.
like you said satirical. Um Going back to the songs, who is Tammy Marie?
Okay, so this is a wonderful story.
Yeah.
Preston loves telling this one.
Because like I'm looking at the tracks right now, and I'm like, okay, these are very like words within my lexicon, but like I looked up Tammy Marie because I'm thinking like, oh, this must have been like a famous person or like a place, but there's literally like nothing on there, so I need to know the answers.
Well, for starters, it's a shrimp boat. I
What?
used to work down at
Oh, it's
Skidaway
a shrimp boat.
Island. Yeah,
Yeah.
I used to work
Okay.
down at Skidaway Island State Park in Savannah, and this was around Labor Day a few years ago. There was a hurricane that had come through, and my job was to go out and sample the water out there for bacteria. I was doing bacteria research out there. And during the storm, this shrimp boat kind of came loose from a dock somewhere and had crashed itself up on this sandbar out in the Intracoastal Waterway, about half a mile down from the dock. My friend Cade Bell and I, after drinking a lot, which is kind of what you do when you're stuck on an island in a hurricane, got the really, really smart idea to get out on some kayaks and try to board the shrimp boat and try to like I don't know what we were gonna do when we got up there.
During a
Uh,
hurricane.
Probably. So it's 4 in the morning. There's a full moon out, so we can see, and we go out into the water on these kayaks. We got a lantern, and we're trying to figure out a way to bring a ladder on, but it's not going to work. We get about halfway across, about 500 yards away, or 250 yards away, and Cade, who's in the front of the kayak, turns around and says, "Hey, by the way, I don't know how to swim, so let's be careful." Luckily, we made it onto the boat without incident and back into the kayak and back onto the dock. But when you're pretty pretty impaired going out into dark water, fast moving current water, not the smartest idea we've ever had.
That's, I mean, I can swim well, but like that's freaky to me. Like
And
when
I'm
you're doing
terrified of sharks, so
oh, you are.
going out and falling into salt water probably would have given me a heart attack.
Do you like have you had any other like near death experiences like that? Like
Hey Carlos, you remember that time we went urban exploring?
Oh man, this is you just whenever the GPS says to turn left and your instinct is telling you to turn right, just don't listen to the GPS. I think it was like late one night we were traveling from Columbus to Huntsville, and I'm pretty sure that like there was this we had taken a wrong turn and we were going down this like industrial road, and there was this plant up ahead, and you want to talk about in the middle of the night, the smokestacks like bellowing huge flames. It just looked like we were approaching the industrial complex of hell. And so at some point we ended up taking a left-hand turn down into a dead end, and by towing a trailer, I'm pretty sure it was one of those like, oh my gosh, like we're gonna get stuck here, we're gonna die, somebody's gonna come murder us. And here we are, just three dudes just traveling, just want to get to Huntsville so we can play a show the next morning.
On a popped tire, I think, too.
Oh yeah, that too, yeah. So, but I mean, I don't know, that's a really dumb, time. And then we just, we laugh about it now, but like I'm pretty sure we were freaking out, like where the hell are we?
sure it was scary,
How do we get back?
Well, and I was even thinking of a different urban exploration near-death experience where we went into an abandoned school outside of like halfway between Macon and Savannah. And I don't know what we were thinking. We were just kind of like, we have time to kill. Let's go see what this is all about. And it's horrifying. There's, strange markings on the walls, on the chalkboards, and things strewn around. And we get to a back door, kind of in the back part of the school, and it won't open. And we've seen everything we need to see, and we start walking out. We hear that door open and something large and metallic slam out of it. So we actually hurtled our way through all the broken windows to get out of there lickety split, and almost left our friend James behind because he was too slow.
Poor James.
Poor James.
I'm assuming he made it out right.
He's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Relatively speaking.
As the lyrics of the Tammy Marie say, it's a miracle we made it out at all.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's a joke, but yeah.
That's story for a song. That's just always like freaky to me though, like abandoned buildings. Like I don't know. I want to explore one, and even like I myself will watch YouTube videos on abandoned buildings, but I watch it and I think I don't want to be there. Like
I've driven past it before since then, and I
even like
myself,
curiosity then.
yeah, at that point it's just thinking to myself, that was really stupid.
There's this abandoned mansion that was owned by Bruce Lee, and when he died, it got transferred over to this guy who was, I think he was like in the Playboy or porn or like hustler industry. I forget what it was. Oh no, it wasn't that. It was Bruce Lee's mansion, and it got transferred over to this guy who used it as like a sex mansion pretty much for like people to come in and have sex and like book in and write stuff in. And there's this video of this guy like hopping over the fence, and it's really weird too because there's still like insignias from like when Bruce Lee lived there, half with like when that guy owned it. So, and there's like still clothes in there from that day and age. They've just
and this is in Atlanta?
No. This is like in LA or something.
Oh, I was gonna say, holy cow.
Yeah, like if that was in Atlanta, like I would go there like immediately and just like check it out.
Yeah, Atlanta has some interesting buildings.
They do.
That's for sure.
Have you there's actually one right across from me because I'm here at Georgia State right now in Atlanta, and I live right near Auburn Avenue. And Auburn Avenue is like one of the most historical streets in all of Georgia, even Atlanta. Yeah. And there's just this abandoned, I'm looking at it right now, so I'm sorry if I'm not looking at the camera, but there's an abandoned like church looking building that's just like been there forever and no one's ever gone into it. And literally yesterday, these guys like work for a work company like went in there and just did some renovations. So like that's just been unopened for a long time.
Especially around that area. I imagine property is not cheap to keep abandoned.
It's not. I don't even know why it's abandoned. Like, I mean, I understand like it's historical and you want to keep it for historical purposes, but I think tiny renovation should be like done for its upkeep at least.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And it's like crazy to me that they would like do like a high school abandoned. Like, how does that happen? Like, because they're government funded unless it was like a private school.
Well, if the government funded it, I have a few answers for that then.
Yeah, a couple of theories.
Right.
So like these personal stories you have of like these near death experiences and like what you're doing, as far as just living in the South, does that take? I'm assuming it takes a lot of heavy inspiration into your songs too.
Extremely. I love the Southern Gothic literature style, primarily writers like Flannery O'Connor, William Faulkner, people like that. And so their kind of take on the South is interesting, where they seem to enjoy aspects of it, but again, have no problem calling it out when it's, not up to snuff. And I think I have a lot to take credit from for Flannery O'Connor and William Faulkner, because I kind of agree there are aspects of the South that I really like, and then there's a lot that I really don't. And then kind of taking it into a personal perspective can kind of get the message across. Like the song "The Waterfall" is actually about a relative of mine who was a moonshiner, and he actually broke off from a chain gang and decided, I'd rather not live the rest of my life on the run or in jail. So he had a shootout with local authorities and died.
See, that's like a story you'd only hear in the South. Like,
Exactly.
if like in Midtown, Buckhead, like you just the worst you'd hear is like, oh, there was this threat, people left, and like that's it. But like
Yeah.
with the South, I feel like you have a much more stringent and contingency on like a climax to a story or like just who was there, what time, what, where, if, pretty much.
Yeah. It's very, very Appalachia in origin.
Was there ever like was there ever like an origin story that you thought of and you wanted to put it into a song but wound up not doing it just for like it would make the South look bad or just anything like that?
I haven't really found anything that wouldn't be good material for a song. Like I would say there's nothing that can't be talked about, especially if it's something that we can do a lot better about.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I don't know. I feel like there are sometimes when an artist would see something like from their past and want to put it into a song, and then they do it, and then they instantly regret it.
Well,
Because
I almost had that case with Whiskey Doe, because I was in a very abusive relationship. I was the recipient, not the instigator of that. And I was trying to get out of it. It was one of those situations where it just wasn't good at all for my physical being or emotional at all. Like I still have physical and emotional scars from that. But the day I was actually going to break up with her, she broke her femur in a car accident, and her family just kind of dumped her on my doorstep, and I ended up taking care of her for 7 months, all the while still being abused and like having to wait on this person hand and foot. And Whiskey Doe kind of came out of it. Whiskey Doe was actually her tag at the hospital, because she didn't have insurance or a license on her at the time of the accident, because she was a pedestrian. And so, it was like a John Doe, Jane Doe situation. She was
right.
the 20 something whatever person that was a Jane Doe that day. So they went by military alphabet and was designated Whiskey Doe. But yeah, it was kind of a very entrapped feeling for the longest time, because you've already made your mind up to get out of this terrible situation that you already are still kind of reeling and raw from, and then you're stuck there for a lot longer.
Do you think for things you've gone through like that, being in an abusive relationship, would you consider like writing more songs about that, or
I
just like kind of shoving it and like taking it out, like and releasing that stress, or even
I
therapy in another way?
I have gone through therapy, and it's been very effective. I think that there may be just a little bit more story wise to tell, but other than that, I think you know, there's there's a lot more stories to tell. So it's not necessarily good to stay on the same subject for too long.
Gotcha. Because when I always think of that, I always just think of like Eminem with the way he was raised and like how
Sure.
his early songs were, and then now he's been in recovery, and for the most part, you don't even see like or don't even like hear any of those themes on a song about how he grew up like poor or how abusive his mom was, or you never hear of anything like that at all.
Right.
So
The
I'm not
music changes with the artist, and I think, you know, as you go through different life experiences, you have different things that speak to you.
because like you just said you graduated college like 2015, like you graduated college, right?
Hmm.
And are you still working in that field of, apart from being in the band, are you still like working in the field of microbiology and research and all that?
Yes, I am.
Where do you want to take it?
I work for a federal office in Atlanta, and that's kind of where I intend on staying.
Gotcha. So, do you think, are you planning on moving to Atlanta?
Oh, I
Or,
live in Atlanta.
oh, okay. Gotcha. What part?
Buckhead,
Oh, okay. So, do you
soon to
think
be
like you're,
Smyrna.
oh, all right. So, do you think like with your origins coming from the South, do you think your songs would change over time? Um, where your location's based, or do you think you still have those like Southern roots, and why?
Oh man, that is a very good question. It's a very good question. I think it's hard to lose the kind of small town charm from my life, and especially with how much I go back up into the mountains and go hiking and camping and up to the lake, and you know, getting back in touch with that. But also it's nice to be in Atlanta around a lot more progressively minded individuals. So I'm sure that that'll have an effect on my songwriting, but I'd like to think that at its core it'll still be what it is.
Yeah, I think it's always really great when an artist goes somewhere else, but they still like retain that core in them. Are there any artists that you look up to in that way or that inspire you?
Carlos, do you have any migrant musicians?
I mean, not really. I like when I think about music. Like, I think at some point, once you become an artist, you know, your influences from other people start to diminish over time. Like, yeah, we all listen to our favorite musicians, but once you start exploring, like, what is your style, then like instead of listening for external inspiration, I think you start looking for like internal inspiration. Like, what is the music that's coming from inside of me? Like, what and how do I get that out and put it on paper? You know, what are the words? What is the music? What is the arrangement? And I don't know. I think I'm kind of at that point where I like the music that I listen to, but I'm really trying to discover the music that is coming from me, if that makes sense.
Right. I think when we started doing the Ghost Moths thing, there was a lot of inspiration from acts like Royal Blood, the Black Keys, the White Stripes, Rain Wolf, things of that nature. And I think now moving forward, it'll be Ghost Moths, you know, not us trying to cherry pick and take things that we like from these different artists to be inspired by, but just kind of going for what sounds right to us.
Do you think you lose track of listening to your influences over time when you're trying to find the inner self of like how you want to stylize your sound?
I definitely think it's possible. It's very
Because like
difficult.
you can like lose. I was just saying because like you could lose, like you said, your idea of trying to influence yourself from the artist, but like listening to it in general, would that ever get lost?
I think it's healthy to keep listening to different music and obviously finding things that you enjoy from that, and you know, taking re-listens from other people. It's very interesting that you mentioned that because it's not something that I've really considered, but I would think it's definitely possible to lose a bit of that kind of background in self-search.
Because I know I've done that. I just know that I've done that myself, working with the station. Because I'll listen to a lot of artists. Because like at my job, I'm in charge of like being a video assistant, which means I record some of the artists for their live recording sessions. So like one day it'll be a rock artist. One day it'll be a rapper. One day it'll be a blues artist. One day it'll be this. It'll be that. So I'll be working with that a lot, and then later that night, like when the job is done, I'll go to the gym and just like listen to everything that I grew up with or everything that keeps me motivated and keeps me running pretty much. So and then I think to myself, like, wait, like I still listen to this, but I listen to all this other stuff too. So I just think the more you get older, the lexicon of like how much music you listen to like opens up as well.
Definitely. I'm listening to a lot of stuff I never ever would have considered, back when I was 16. For the better, it's
Yeah.
cool to listen to all kinds of different music that you find interesting.
I remember like being in high school and like freshman year, the only things I would listen to are like Led Zeppelin, Metallica, and like just bands like on that same spectrum. And then I remember I took a class. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, in my music appreciation class, my professor was like telling us like the intro to the class, like, okay, why did I say professor like when I'm in high school? Like, a lexicon. But my teacher, quotation marks, asked us like, so what is music appreciation? And he was saying like, well, there's different types of music in the world. So like, for example, I don't like world music too much. It's not my favorite thing in the world. I don't want to listen to it too much, but I can appreciate like how that's put together. And then that pretty much molded my way of like saying, oh, I can listen to things like Radiohead. I can listen to Kanye West. I can listen to like, I don't know, like NSYNC even, and like be much more appreciative of it now than I was way back when I was in high school.
Yeah, and you don't have to necessarily like the entire discography.
You don't. No, not at all.
Lord knows I'm not a huge fan of certain Blink-182 albums, but I really do enjoy that band.
See, the thing with me is that for that band is that I like Blink-182 without Tom DeLonge. It's an unpopular.
You like the Matt Skiba?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I like Tom DeLonge when he's not singing.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's a good like.
Plus 44, then maybe.
Yeah, I was more into that. Like, I wish they would release more music, but obviously it's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Carlos, is there a Yellow Card album or track or two that you dislike?
Man, that's such a hard question. I mean, in a weird way, like Yellow Card's probably like one of my favorite bands of all time, right? And it's really weird because their very first album, their like lead singer wasn't even there, so it's kind of hard to say like was it even really the band. It's always really hard when like bands will change lead singers because at that point it's so hard to try to preserve that same style and have some continuity there. Whereas, I mean, essentially, if you play an instrument, then the instrument is the voice. It's not the person playing it, if that makes sense.
It does. I definitely see
to some degree. But like, and then there's other things though, like too, like when it comes to like style changes. I know. I mean, I'm really showing my here. Fall Out Boy. Their old stuff, like as growing up, that was what I grew up to. And then, when they took their hiatus and then they came back with Save Rock and Roll, I was like, what is this? And I hated it at first. I was like, this is not Fall Out Boy. But kind of coming back to it, like a few years later, I started listening to it. I started giving it like an honest listen, and it was different. But it really started to grow on me, and I think now that some of the songs from their later albums have become some of my favorites to listen to. So I don't know, like it's a weird thing. Sometimes what you like now is not what you're going to like later, and
Well, and you can't expect bands to make the same album over and over again.
I absolutely do. I think if you're going to put out a record, it's going to sound the same every time. I have unrealistic expectations.
Then you probably hate Radiohead then, if that's the case.
I'm just kidding. Who's Radiohead? I'm just kidding. These are all really good jokes.
It looks like people are gonna like find our Facebook page and tear us a new one now.
That's right.
How dare you disagree with me? Blah blah blah. But I don't know. I guess like it depends like how a band changes their sound in a way too.
Yeah, and
like if you do it for because you could do it for like increasing your commercial success, or you could do it as just like your like artistic boundaries.
Yeah, so I think with certain ones like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I mean, think about how many like stylistic changes they've gone through from
Mm-hmm.
the self-titled album all the way to the most recent one, and I think it's just a sign of age.
Yeah.
Uh, they're maturing as people. Well, maturing as much as Flea can, but maturing as people do, and taking a more laid back approach to music as opposed to their old speed taking days.
Flea is like one of those interesting people to me in music because you'll see like bands like mature over time, like obviously like they're not like wearing like penis or cock socks, right? Like as they did like way back in the day because
Right.
they have like families and kids. But for me, Flea, and even Flea's not doing it too, but like Flea's always like one of those people who will still have like the immaturity of like a teenager and some guy in his 20s, but he's also like a very smart, mature person as well. And he's
It's
able to
funny
balance
how that
things
works.
too.
He definitely didn't lose the child in him, and that can
No,
be a little bit commendable.
it really is. Because I remember I was watching this documentary on I forget it's called F is for Father, and it's about punk rock musicians talking about like how fathers would change them. And I remember they interviewed Flea, even though he's not punk rock, but he was like from the same area as all those musicians, and he grew up with
Yeah,
them. So he was included. They were talking. He was talking about like, yeah, like I'm still the same person as I was, like almost the same person as I was way back when. But like having a daughter like changed my life forever, and like he was like tearing up, like crying about it.
dang,
And
yeah.
yeah, like it's show, and like I could not see like a 20-year-old or like an 18-year-old like doing that. So I think there is like a maturity in him, but he's really has this gift of like balancing it out with how he was back then and making it not seem obnoxious.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta let loose still.
Yeah, like I mean, all those guys like are like, I mean, Anthony and Flea are the Chili Peppers, but like also too like the like Chad, like the drummer, is basically grown up like in the midst of their like success.
Absolutely.
And I think also too, like John Frusciante, I think he like left for a little bit because they were successful and he didn't know what to do with himself.
God, I do like that album without him though, the one with Dave Navarro on
Yeah,
hi-hat.
he was a good. If you were to replace them, I think he was like a really good fit too. Because Airplane's a great song.
I was one of those people that was really into funk metal back in the day. I was one of those kind of people. So I was all down for the heavier sound that Navarro brought to it. But yeah, I mean, there's so many bands that change over the time, and I think it would be unrealistic for people to expect them not to.
I always think of Henry Rollins as well.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
Lord knows whatever we release next is probably going to sound completely different from Burn the Barn.
yeah. Maybe they'll go back to making a pop punk album. Who knows?
I don't know. I don't feel like we'll ever be able to let go of the pop punk roots. What do you think, Carlos?
I mean, like you certainly want to bring the energy and that kind of stuff and make,
Exactly.
but at the same time, like who knows? I don't know. Like we haven't written anything yet for what's to come. So I mean, I'm listening a lot to the Lonely Island, and I've got some really great ideas though.
Well, hip hop and all that stuff is the future. We might take some electronic or inspiration in terms of arrangement. Who knows?
I was talking to a Cardiac Cap who I had out on last night, and they were saying like how they grew up like pop punk guys, and then they started listening to synth pop, and they were like, "This is cool, let's do it." So you never really know like what direction it could go in for sure.
Oh, absolutely. If you had told me when I was starting to play music that I'd be doing something like this, I would have laughed my head off.
Yep.
Yeah, the gothic blues sound, just it gets catchy. It's definitely got that pop element in there, even if it's
I'd like
not
to
like
think so.
entirely pop punk. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's always.
absolutely.
Do you think like because like blues is like pretty much like one of the most, if not the most influential genres. So there's definitely that masterclass of like how that genre is influential as far as chord structure goes into other like genres as well.
Absolutely. I mean, and the musicians that were responsible for kind of bringing the blues to its forefront, I mean, they're just incredible songwriters. I'm talking like Skip James and Taj Mahal and uh, Blind Willie McTell. I mean, all of them are incredible storytellers. And that was the thing with blues, is I think there was a relatability to that kind of music with a lot of people. Everyone has a depressive period of their life, and people relate to that.
And that's the biggest thing too, is just relation.
I think so. I couldn't agree more. I think if you can't relate to people, it can be a little difficult or a little bit frustrating in your musical journey. That's not to say that like noise music or harsh noise or things like that aren't accessible. In fact, I really enjoy a lot of noise artists, but
have you listened to the new Daughters record?
What's that?
The new Daughters record?
No, I haven't checked that out.
Oh my god, it's fantastic. They're actually going to be playing at the Masquerade this coming year.
Really?
But if you are having free time and you want to listen to a good noise album, like the new Daughters record is the way to go.
I'll do that on my drive home. But yeah, it's it's a genre that's not necessarily trying to be the most accessible, but it still resonates with people. I think that's awesome. People will be able to interact and engage with a lot of different styles, which is awesome.
Yeah, I feel like the same way, like the way that blues like had a following way back in the day, and still does. I feel like it's the same way with like dubstep or something where it's like or noise where it's like there's nothing too relatable lyrically, obviously, but like I'm in with an eclectic group of people, and I think the community is like the biggest thing that brings it and binds it all together.
Absolutely.
Is there if knowing like how long you've been a band for, like where do you find like the biggest blues community in Atlanta? Like where do we find the blues?
Where do we find the blues? I think I'm still finding that out, actually.
You're still on that journey.
I'm still on that journey. There are obviously a lot of blues and blues inspired acts around here. I'm a huge fan of the Drown Towns, and I think that there's definitely a scene for it. Absolutely, there are people that are really engaged in it. I don't know if there's like a specific place beside Blind Willie's that really, or Fat Matt's, that really caters to blues and blues only. But there's definitely a lot of if not directly blues, then blues inspired bands that I think are worth checking out.
Yeah, I mean, because like I've grown up so much around like rap and rock and like all these other genres that have been in Atlanta, and this is like the first time I'm talking to someone who's actually like, I would say like a heavy gothic blues artist. Like, how do you define yourself? Like, is it gothic blues, heavy blues?
I normally describe it as Southern Gothic because it kind of puts that literary kind of criticism of the South in there. I also use heavy blues. A lot of people say it's kind of closer to old school heavy metal, kind of like the Sabbath kind of sound. And I'll admit this, people can find my page and yell at me, but I've actually never really listened to a whole lot of Sabbath, so I can't really say for sure.
It's great, but it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, hey, I didn't real I what it was I'm sure there's like some artists I've never listened to before in a while, and they're like, people are like, you've never listened to so and so. It's like, yeah, do you have any idea how much music there is in the world?
Well, with Sabbath, with like parents like I did that grew up that listened to everything, it's kind of funny that was one of them that slipped through the cracks, really.
I mean, because like, yeah, I remember like I never like watched Pulp Fiction until like 2 years ago, or like not 2 years ago, like until I was like 17, because
right, there's a lot of influential stuff that you're not avoiding it for any particular reason, you just never get around to it.
Yeah. It's physically, I think it's, well, I don't think I know, it's physically impossible to listen to every single song that's released in popularity.
Oh god, no,
like
no.
Yeah, there's no way. So like there's no like rant taken that you haven't listened to too much Sabbath.
Hopefully not.
None. Well, we're just like about out of time for the show. But before we go, I did this with the last band Cardiac Half, but it was just say, if you want to, you can either have it be a secret or a fun fact. Say a secret or a fun fact about yourself that a lot of people don't know.
Carlos, what you got? I'm gonna have to think about this for a second.
Man, I was about to defer to you, bro.
A secret or a fun fact? Oh, I got one. I'm actually left-handed. The only thing I do right-handed are play instruments.
So you're ambidextrous?
No, the only thing I do right-handed are
That's the only thing. Gotcha.
That's all I do
That's
right-handed.
maybe that was like destiny. Maybe it was like the way to find the blues through your right hand.
It was the quickest guitar I could get a hold of was lucky, so that's just what I stuck with.
That's great.
Man, I don't know. That's such a really like tough question to ask. Because like what I don't really know what's like interesting about myself. I guess like being a drummer, I never ever played in like a drum line. So that's one of those weird things that being a drummer, a lot of people like expect that I can do like all these like cool like stick tricks and.
I always forget that you never marched. You have the chops for
I never
it.
marched. I only did concert band and jazz band when I was like kind of in music education back in the day. So yeah, it's and it was really strange. One time I got selected to be in the like the all parish band, and it was a marching band, and so they gave me this like marching snare, and of course I'm like, these sticks are weird, and what is this like traditional grip? I've never done this before.
I've held them before. They are really strange from like regular like drumsticks.
Yeah, and it was crazy. Everybody there like was totally schooling me on like all the things that they could do, but then they put sheet music in front of us, and I was the only person who could read and play that. And everybody's looking at me like, "Dang, look at this dude playing." I'm like, guys, do you don't know how to read music? But at the same time, that's not to say that marchers don't know how to read music. But
we're gonna have so many people on our page yelling at us now.
No, just yell at me. No, but I'm just saying it's a really interesting thing, like just never having march. And I mean, I have a tremendous respect for marching bands, and I'm kind of always wish that I would have gotten a taste of that, because I really did have a lot of fun that day. Met a lot of cool people, learned a lot of things, and yeah, I guess that's my cool fact of the day.
Awesome. Do y'all have any, forgot to ask this before, but do y'all have any upcoming shows in the near future? Because I know the one with Lincoln Durham's coming up. But...
that's definitely the most exciting one. We're really excited because the last time Lincoln came into town, he was at Vinyl, I believe. I was there, and I just kind of like said to myself, the next time he comes into town, I want to play with him. And luckily it worked out that way. We have a couple of smaller house shows throughout this month and next month that you can find as we update them on our Facebook page or Instagram. But yeah, y'all should come out to Lincoln Durham's show, if not for our sake, but for his.
And I'll link those as well on my page as well, and get your page on there too, so people know about this.
Thanks, man.
Sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. So that once again, this has been the With Where and Who podcast with Ghost Moths. Thank you all so much for listening, and we are tuning out.